The Great Hall of Station was built for giants. The ceilings rose so high that clouds could form beneath them. The pillars were carved from stone taken from dead worlds. Everything about this place was made to remind visitors that they were small, that they were nothing. Lieutenant Park stood in the center of this hall and tried not to feel afraid. Around him, creatures from 12 different species watched with eyes that held no warmth. Some were massive, with bodies like living mountains. Others were thin and sharp, with limbs that could cut through metal. All of them looked at like he was an insect that had wandered into their home. The ambassador was the worst. His name was, and he stood 3 meters tall. His skin was the color of dark iron and his 4 arms were thick with muscle. When he moved, the floor shook slightly. When he spoke, his voice sounded like thunder rolling across an empty plain. "So this is what Earth sends us," said. He walked in a slow circle around, studying him the way a child might study a bug before crushing it. "This is their warrior, their protector." Kept his eyes forward. He had been trained for this. He had been warned that the aliens would try to make him feel small. But training was one thing. Standing here, surrounded by beings who could tear him apart with their bare hands, was something else entirely. Stopped in front of him. The ambassador leaned down until his face was close to his. His breath smelled like copper and smoke. "I could kill you with 2 fingers," said softly. "I could crush your skull like an egg. Your bones are like dry twigs. Your muscles are like wet paper. You are nothing." The hall filled with sounds that might have been laughter, clicks and rumbles and high-pitched whistles. Every species had a different way of showing amusement, but the meaning was the same. They were laughing at him. They were laughing at all of humanity. Said nothing. He simply stood there, breathing slowly, waiting. Ambassador stepped forward. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had spent 40 years as a diplomat, and she had seen things that would break most people. Nothing in this hall surprised her. "We are not here to compare strength," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "We are here to discuss the outer reach territories." Turned to look at her. For a moment, something like curiosity crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by the same cold contempt. "There is nothing to discuss," he said. "The outer reach belongs to the Empire. It has belonged to us for 10,000 years. Your little colonies are an insult. Your mining operations are theft." "We found those worlds empty," replied. "We built those colonies with our own hands. Surely we can find a way to share." "Share" made a sound like rocks grinding together. It took a moment to realize it was laughter. "The do not share. We take. We conquer, we rule. This is the way of the galaxy. The strong decide, the weak obey." He gestured with one of his massive arms. "Look at your soldier. Look at how small he is, how fragile. In my culture, we would not let such a creature live. We would consider it a mercy to end its suffering." The other species in the hall made sounds of agreement. The beings with shells like black glass clicked their mandibles in approval. The massive reptiles with scales like armor plates stomped their feet in a slow rhythm. Did not flinch. She had expected this. Every report, every piece of intelligence had told her the same thing. The Galactic Coalition respected only one thing: power. Raw, physical, undeniable power. And by that measure, humanity had none. "We propose a compromise," she said, addressing the full assembly. "Shared development rights in the outer reach, joint mining operations, mutual trade agreements. Both our peoples can benefit." The ambassador rose from his seat. His translator box crackled as it converted his clicking speech into words. "How amusing," he said. "The prey wishes to negotiate with the predator. Does the animal bargain with the hunter? Does the grain argue with the farmer?" More laughter, more contempt. Raised one hand, and the hall fell silent. "I will give you a choice," he said because I am merciful, because I find your species entertaining. You have 30 cycles to remove every human from the outer reach, every colony, every ship, every person. If even one human remains after 30 cycles, my fleet will come, and we will remove them ourselves." He smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "We will remove them permanently." The session ended after that. There was nothing more to say. Humanity had been given its orders: obey or die. Those were the only options the Coalition understood. That night stood at the viewport in the small quarters assigned to the human delegation. The room was barely large enough for a bed and a desk. Outside the window, cargo ships drifted past like slow whales swimming through dark water. He heard footsteps behind him, entered and stood beside him, looking out at the same view. "You handled yourself well today," she said. "I didn't do anything." "Exactly. You stood there while a creature 3 times your size threatened to kill you. You didn't run, you didn't beg, you didn't even blink." She paused. "That takes a different kind of strength." Shook his head. "They're right though, we are weak. I've seen the reports on soldiers. They can run for 3 days without rest. They can survive wounds that would kill any human. Their ships are bigger, their weapons are stronger, their fleet is larger." He turned to look at her. "How are we supposed to fight that?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "Do you know why I requested you for this mission, Lieutenant?" "No, ma'am." "Because I read your file. I know about the incident on Colony 7, when the life support failed and you spent 18 hours keeping 32 civilians alive with nothing but emergency supplies and duct tape. You had 3 broken ribs and a punctured lung. The doctors said you should have passed out after the first hour." Looked away. "I just did what needed to be done." "Exactly," smiled slightly. "The measure everything in absolutes: strongest, fastest, most durable. They look at us and see weakness because we don't match their standards. But they've never met a species like us, Lieutenant. They've never faced an enemy that adapts, that improvises, that refuses to give up even when the situation is hopeless." She turned back to the viewport. "They think strength means never breaking, but real strength is something different. Real strength is breaking and getting back up anyway. It's knowing you're outmatched and fighting anyway. It's being afraid and standing your ground anyway." Considered her words. Outside, a warship glided past. It was massive, bristling with weapons, its hull decorated with the symbols of 100 conquered worlds. "You think we can beat them?" he asked. Smile faded. Her eyes grew hard. "I think they've never lost a war because they've never fought anyone willing to truly suffer for victory. They've conquered species that surrendered when the odds turned against them. They've crushed enemies who valued survival above all else." She paused. "They have never faced an enemy who would rather die than kneel." She looked at directly. "They have never fought humans." Somewhere in the station, an officer was probably laughing about the weak little creatures from Earth. Somewhere, the Coalition ambassadors were placing bets on how quickly humanity would surrender. They didn't understand yet. But they would. The message from Earth arrived 3 days after the assembly meeting. Was eating breakfast in the small human quarters when burst through the door, her face pale but her eyes bright with something he couldn't quite read. "We have our answer," she said. She activated the holographic display on the wall. Admiral Shin appeared, his weathered face filling the screen. He was 63 years old, with hair gone completely white and scars on his jaw from battles fought decades ago. He had commanded humanity's first deep space carrier group. He had been present at first contact with the... He had spent his entire life preparing for a moment that everyone prayed would never come. "This message is being broadcast on all diplomatic channels," the Admiral said. His voice was calm but firm. "To the Empire and the Galactic Coalition, we have received your ultimatum regarding the Outer Reach territories." Set down his food. His heart began to beat faster. "The people of the Outer Reach are citizens of Earth. They built their homes with their own hands. They raised their children in those colonies. They buried their dead in that soil." The Admiral paused. We do not abandon our own. Somewhere on station knew every species with a translator was hearing these words. He wondered what they were thinking. He wondered if they understood what was about to happen. Therefore, Admiral Shin continued, we respectfully decline your demand for withdrawal. The Outer Reach colonies will remain under Earth's protection. Any attack on those colonies will be considered an act of war against humanity. The message ended. The room was silent. He refused, said almost to himself. He actually refused. Nodded slowly. The decision was unanimous. Every government on Earth voted the same way. No retreat, no surrender. But the fleet, 200 warships, yes, I know, sat down heavily in the nearest chair. She suddenly looked very tired. We have 43 ships capable of combat operations in the region. Most of them are converted cargo vessels with weapons bolted to the hull. Felt cold. The numbers were impossible. 5-to-1 odds at minimum against an enemy with superior technology and centuries of combat experience. It wasn't a battle. It was suicide. Why? He asked. Why would they choose to fight when they know we can't win? Looked at him for a long moment. Because sometimes losing isn't the worst thing that can happen, she said quietly. Sometimes the worst thing is giving up who you are, becoming something you can't live with. She shook her head. Earth decided that humanity would rather die standing than live on its knees. The response came within hours. Appeared on every screen in the station, his iron face twisted with rage. Foolish creatures, he snarled. You dare to defy us. You dare to challenge the Empire with your pathetic toys and your fragile soldiers. He leaned toward the camera, his eyes burning. We will teach you the price of arrogance. We will burn your colonies to ash. We will hunt down every human in the Outer Reach and show them what happens to prey that forgets its place. The transmission cut to images of the fleet. Ship after ship filled the screen. Massive dreadnoughts with weapons that could crack planets. Sleek destroyers designed for speed and murder. Carriers that held thousands of fighters in their bellies. The fleet stretched across the void like a dark tide ready to drown everything in its path. 27 cycles, said. That is how long you have to watch us come. 27 cycles to regret your choice. And then we will show the galaxy what becomes of species that forget their place in the order of things. The screen went dark. Was transferred to the Perseverance 2 days later. The ship was one of humanity's largest warships, but standing on its bridge, looking out at the stars, he felt very small, very fragile, very mortal. Admiral Shin stood at the center of the bridge, studying tactical displays that showed the approaching fleet. Red dots moved slowly across the screen like drops of blood spreading through water. Lieutenant Park, the Admiral said without turning around. I read your file, Colony 7, impressive work. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. Shin finally turned to face him. His eyes were tired but steady. I'm putting you in command of Strike Team 7, boarding operations. Blinked, boarding operations, sir. They have never fought a boarding action. They've never needed to. Their ships are fortresses and their warriors are monsters. No species has ever been foolish enough to try breaching a vessel. A thin smile crossed Shin's face. I'm counting on that. Sir, with respect, their soldiers are twice our size, 3 times as strong. How are we supposed to? Lieutenant, the Admiral's voice was sharp enough to cut steel. I've spent 40 years studying warfare. I've read every military text ever written, from Sun to the strategists. And do you know what I've learned? Shook his head. Wars aren't won by the strongest. They're won by the ones who want it more, by the ones willing to bleed more, sacrifice more, endure more. He gestured at the tactical display. They think this is already over. They think we'll break the moment they hit us. They've never faced an enemy who fights harder when they're losing, who becomes more dangerous when they're wounded. He put a hand on shoulder. They've never fought humans. The fleet deployed 6 hours later. 43 ships moving into formation. each one carrying crews who knew the odds, each one carrying men and women who had chosen to be here anyway. Admiral Shin's voice came over every speaker on every ship. All hands, this is the Admiral. In approximately 18 hours we will engage the fleet. I won't lie to you, the odds aren't good. We are outnumbered 5 to 1, our ships are smaller, our weapons are weaker. By every measure that the galaxy uses, we should lose this battle. A pause, could hear people breathing around him. Someone was praying quietly in the corner. But I've read the intelligence reports on them. They've never lost a war. They've never been pushed. They've never faced an enemy willing to truly bleed for victory. They think they know what war is. They think they understand sacrifice. The Admiral's voice grew harder. They don't. They've conquered species that surrendered when things got difficult. They've crushed enemies who valued their lives more than their freedom. They have never, not once in their entire history, faced an enemy who would rather die than give up. Static crackled across the channel. Today we show them what that looks like. Today we show the entire galaxy that humanity does not kneel, does not beg, does not break. Another pause. Some of us won't survive this battle. I know that, you know that. But I promise you this, they will remember us. The coalition will remember us. 1,000 years from now, species we've never met will tell stories about what happened here. Felt something stir in his chest. Fear, yes, but something else too, something older and deeper. Something that whispered that some things were worth dying for. All stations prepare for combat operations. We deploy in 6 hours. The Admiral's voice softened slightly. It has been my honor to serve with you, every single one of you. Now let's show these bastards what humans are made of. The channel closed. Silence filled the ship. Then somewhere in the crew quarters someone started singing. It was an old song, something from Earth's history, something about standing together, about never giving up. Other voices joined in. The sound spread through the ship like fire through dry grass. Soon the entire Perseverance was singing, and through the void on 42 other ships, other voices rose to join them. The fleet was still approaching, still confident, still certain of victory. They had no idea what was coming. The first shots came at 3:47 hours, ship time. Was strapped into his seat aboard boarding pod 7 when the Perseverance shook like a toy in an angry child's hand. The lights flickered. Metal screamed somewhere in the distance. Through the small viewport beside him, he saw fire blooming in the darkness. The S-Horizon died first. One moment it was there, a proud ship carrying 300 souls. The next moment it was a cloud of burning metal spreading outward like a bloody flower. The weapons were everything the reports had promised. Fast, powerful, merciless. Horizon is gone, someone said over the communications channel. Their voice was shaking. Steadfast is venting atmosphere. Resolution is. The channel dissolved into static. On the bridge of his flagship, watched the battle with satisfaction. The human ships were scattering, their formation breaking apart like a school of fish before sharks, exactly as expected, exactly as predicted. Pathetic, he said to his officers. Signal the fleet, full pursuit. I want this finished within the hour. The ship surged forward, hungry for blood. But something strange was happening. The human ships weren't fleeing in random directions. They were moving with purpose, weaving through the debris field of their own destroyed vessels, using the wreckage of the Horizon, the Steadfast, and 3 other fallen ships as cover. And from the broken hulks, small objects were launching, dozens of them, hundreds. What are those? Demanded, pointing at the tactical display. His sensor officer leaned forward, confusion on his iron face. Escape pods, Commander, but they're not moving toward safety. They're moving toward us. Toward us. They're heading directly for our ships. For a moment didn't understand. Escape pods were for fleeing, for retreat. What possible reason could the humans have for? Understanding hit him like a physical blow. "They're boarding us," he said slowly. "The mad creatures are actually trying to board us." His officers made sounds of disbelief. Boarding a warship was suicide. Their corridors were designed for warriors twice the size of humans. Their defenders were the finest soldiers in the galaxy. No species had ever attempted such a thing. "Let them come," said, recovering his composure. "My warriors will tear them apart like paper." He was wrong. Lieutenant felt the boarding pod slam into the hull of the ship Dominance. The impact threw her against her restraints hard enough to crack a rib. Blood ran from a cut above her eye. Her left arm hung wrong, probably dislocated. She didn't care. "Breach in 30 seconds," she shouted to her team. 11 other soldiers, all of them battered, all of them scared, all of them ready. "Remember your training. Stay low, move fast, hit the weak points." They had weak points, not many but enough. Their knee joints were vulnerable. Their eyes were sensitive to bright light. Their reaction time was slower than expected because they'd never needed fast reflexes. They'd never fought prey that fought back. The hull split open, was through the gap before the metal stopped glowing. The corridor beyond was huge. The ceiling was 4 meters high. The walls were carved with symbols of conquest, and standing in her way was a nightmare. The warrior was a mountain of muscle and rage. His armor was from 100 battles. His weapon was a massive blade that could cut through steel like butter. He looked at her team and made a sound of contempt. "Little prey," he rumbled, "come to die." Shot him in the knee. The specialized round punched through the weak point in his armor and shattered the joint beneath. The giant fell with a crash that shook the floor. Before he could rise, was past him, already moving down the corridor. More warriors came, many more. And's team was small, weak, fragile by standards. But they were also fast, faster than the expected. They moved through spaces the giants couldn't follow. They used weapons designed to exploit every weakness the enemy had. And they absolutely refused to die. Private O took a wound that should have killed him. A blade sliced across his stomach, opening him like a fish. He pressed one hand against the wound to hold himself together and kept shooting with the other. He killed 3 more enemies before he finally collapsed. Sergeant lost her weapon in a struggle with a warrior twice her size. She grabbed a broken piece of metal from the floor and drove it through his eye. When 2 more came for her, she fought them with her bare hands until another soldier could reach her. Herself was hit twice, once in the shoulder, once in the thigh. Each wound was agony. Each wound should have stopped her. She kept moving anyway because that's what humans did. They kept moving until their bodies simply couldn't move anymore. The engine room was their target, the heart of the Dominance. They reached it with 6 soldiers remaining. 6 out of 12. Half their number dead or dying in the corridors behind them. The engine core was massive, beautiful in a terrible way. Energy swirled within it like a captive sun. "Charges set," Corporal reported. His hands were steady even though his face was pale from blood loss. 30 seconds to detonation. "Everyone out," ordered. "Move." They ran. Behind them the charges counted down. Around them the ship groaned as crews realized what was about to happen. The explosion was visible from space. The Dominance broke apart in a cascade of fire and light. The blast caught 3 escort ships that were too close, cracking their hulls, sending them spinning into each other. In the span of 30 seconds, 4 ships died. Killed by a woman with a dislocated arm and 11 soldiers who refused to stop. Across the battlefield, similar stories were unfolding. Human boarding teams breaching vessels. Human soldiers fighting through wounds that should have been fatal. Human crews sacrificing themselves to buy their comrades 1 more minute, 1 more chance. The mathematics of the battle were clear. Humanity was losing. Their ships were being destroyed faster than they could inflict damage. By any rational calculation, they should have been crushed within the first hour. But they had never fought an enemy like this. They had never faced soldiers who became more dangerous as they were wounded, who fought harder when their friends died, who treated every setback as a reason to push forward rather than retreat. Admiral Shin watched the battle from the bridge of the Perseverance. His ship was wounded. Fires burned in 3 sections. A quarter of his crew was dead. By every standard measure, he was losing. But he was also watching the fleet hesitate, watching their confident advance slow, watching fear appear in places where fear had never existed before. "Signal all ships," he said calmly. "Phase 2 now." The human fleet, scattered and bleeding, suddenly changed direction. Every surviving ship turned toward the flagship, not fleeing anymore, attacking. Stared at his display in disbelief. "They should be retreating," he said. "We've destroyed nearly half their fleet. Why aren't they running?" No one had an answer. The battle raged for 4 more hours. When it finally ended, the void was filled with the wreckage of ships from both sides. They had lost 73 vessels. Humanity had lost 28. The numbers still favored they still had more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. But something had changed. They had expected the humans to break, to flee, to beg for mercy when the reality of their situation became clear. Instead, the humans had made them bleed. Stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, staring at the tactical display. His officers were silent around him. For the first time in his long career, he felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. "Signal the fleet," he said finally. "We pull back to regroup." "Commander," his first officer looked shocked. "We outnumber them, we can still." "I said pull back." His voice was harsh. "These creatures are not what we expected. We need to reconsider our approach." As the fleet, Admiral Shin allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was something. It was proof that humans could make the mighty pause. It was proof that the weak could make the strong afraid. And for now, that was enough. The medical bay of the Perseverance was not designed to hold this many wounded. It was designed for accidents, for minor injuries, for the small emergencies of daily life in space. It was not designed for war. Bodies filled every bed, every chair, every piece of floor. The air smelled like blood and antiseptic and fear. Medics moved through the chaos with exhausted faces, trying to save people who by all rights should already be dead. Walked through this hell slowly. His own wounds had been treated barely. A bandage wrapped around his chest covered the place where a piece of shrapnel had nearly reached his heart. He should have been resting. He couldn't rest. He found Lieutenant in a corner, lying on a stretcher that had been placed on the floor because there was nowhere else. Her body was more bandaged than skin. Machines beeped softly beside her, tracking vital signs that the doctors said were somehow still stable. Ensign Moon sat beside her, holding her uninjured hand. Stopped nearby. He didn't know what to say. There was nothing to say. "She hasn't woken up," said quietly. She didn't look up. "The doctors say she might not. Too much damage, too much blood loss." Her voice cracked slightly. "She killed 18 of them. Her team destroyed 4 ships. And now?" "She's still fighting," said. "That's what she does." Finally looked at him. Her eyes were red from crying, but something hard lived behind the tears. "She told me something once. Back when I first joined her team, I asked her why humans fight so hard even when we're weak, even when we can't win." His hand tightened around. "She said we're not strong because we don't feel pain. We're strong because we feel it completely. Every wound, every loss, every death, we feel all of it." She paused. "And we keep going anyway." Looked down at still face, at the bandages covering wounds that would have killed any warrior 10 times over, at the stubborn rise and fall of her chest as she refused to stop breathing. "That's what makes us human," he said. The Admiral's voice came over the ship's speakers, cutting through the quiet misery of the medical bay. "All hands, this is Admiral Shin. I have news from Earth." Straightened. Around him, Wounded soldiers lifted their heads. Even those too injured to move seemed to listen more intently. Reinforcements are on the way. 47 ships from the home fleet. They will arrive in 16 hours. A murmur of hope passed through the medical bay. More ships, more soldiers. Maybe they had a chance after all. But the admiral wasn't finished. However, I have also received intelligence reports about the response to our battle. Ambassador is calling in every ship from 3 neighboring sectors. His new fleet will number over 500 warships. The hope died as quickly as it had appeared. Did the mathematics in his head, even with reinforcements, they would have roughly 90 ships against 500. I will not pretend that these odds are good, the admiral continued. I will not lie to you and say that victory is certain. What I will tell you is this: we hurt them. For the first time in their history, they felt pain. They felt fear. They pulled back not because they had to, but because they didn't know what else to do. In the medical bay was crying again, but she was also smiling. Any crew member who wishes to evacuate on the medical transports will receive an honorable discharge. No questions asked. No judgment given. You have already done more than anyone could reasonably ask. Thought about that. Thought about going home. Thought about seeing Earth again, feeling real air in his lungs, standing under a sky that wasn't made of metal. But I am staying, the admiral said, because I have seen what we are capable of. I have watched our people fight through wounds that should have killed them. I have watched them sacrifice everything for their friends, their families, their species. And I believe that if we hold the line here, if we show the coalition that humanity will not break, we change the galaxy forever. The channel went silent for a moment. Those who wish to stay, report to your stations. We begin preparations immediately. The speaker clicked off. Waited for the rush of people heading toward the evacuation shuttles. Waited for the sound of giving up. It never came. Instead, wounded soldiers began pulling themselves to their feet. Men and women with bandages over half their bodies. People who should have been in beds, in surgery, in graves. They stood up, checked their weapons, and started moving toward their posts. One soldier passed on a pair of crude crutches. Both his legs were wrapped in medical foam. He shouldn't have been able to walk at all. "Where are you going?" asked. The soldier looked at him like the question was strange. "To my station. Where else?" "You can barely stand." "I can still shoot." The soldier shrugged with one shoulder. The other was immobilized in a sling. "Besides, if we're all going to die, I'd rather die doing something useful." He hobbled off toward the weapons bay. No one requested evacuation. In the hours that followed, the Perseverance became a hive of desperate activity. Repair crews worked to patch damaged systems. Engineers reinforced weakened hulls with whatever materials they could find. Weapons officers improvised new ammunition when the standard supplies ran low. Found himself in the hangar bay, helping to repair boarding pods for the next assault. His hands were covered in grease, and his chest wound had started bleeding through the bandage again. He ignored it. Ensign Ha worked beside him, welding a crack in one pod's hull. He was young, barely 20, with a face that still looked surprised by everything that was happening. "Sir," said without looking up from his work, "do you think we can actually win?" Considered the question carefully. "Honestly, I don't know. The numbers are terrible. They are stronger than us, faster than us, bigger than us. They have more ships, more weapons, more everything." "Then why are we staying?" Put down his tools. He thought about lying in the medical bay, about holding her hand, about the soldier on crutches walking toward his post, about the admiral who could have retired years ago but instead chose to be here. "Because there are some things more important than winning," he said finally. "Because if we run, we spend the rest of our lives knowing that we gave up, that we let them scare us, that we proved everything they said about us was true." He picked up his tools again. "The think weakness is something to be ashamed of. They think it makes us less, but they're wrong. Our weakness is what makes us strong, because we know what it's like to struggle, to suffer, to lose, and we keep fighting anyway. Was quiet for a long moment. My grandmother was from a small village in Korea, he said finally. During the war before the unification, her village was destroyed. Everyone she knew was killed. She walked for 300 kilometers to reach safety, alone, with nothing. He finished his weld and inspected his work. She lived to be 97, had 4 children, 13, built a good life from nothing. He looked at. She used to say that Koreans are like weeds. You can cut us down, burn us, poison us. We always grow back. Smiled despite everything. Maybe that's what humans are, weeds. The galaxy keeps trying to get rid of us and we just keep growing back. The repair bay fell into comfortable silence. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly past. Somewhere in that darkness, 500 ships were gathering. And 90 human ships were waiting for them. Waiting to show the galaxy what weeds could do. The second battle of shadow began at dawn ship time. Not that dawn meant anything in space, but humans needed markers, needed rituals, needed to believe that each day was a fresh start, even when the stars never changed. Sat in the pilot seat of boarding pod 7. Beside him, Ensign Ha ran through the pre-flight checklist with shaking hands. Behind them, 12 soldiers checked their weapons in silence. Through the viewport, the fleet filled the horizon. 512 ships, the largest military force ever assembled in this sector, dreadnoughts the size of small moons, destroyers sharp as knives, carriers pregnant with thousands of fighters. Against them stood 87 human vessels, the survivors of the first battle plus the reinforcements from Earth. Most of them were smaller than the smallest ship. Many were damaged from the previous engagement. All of them were crewed by people who knew exactly what they were facing. The Galactic Coalition had sent observers, representatives from every member species, traveling in diplomatic vessels that stayed far from the battle zone. They expected to watch humanity's extinction. The final proof that strength was the only thing that mattered. They were about to learn something else. Admiral Shin's voice came over the fleet channel. All ships, this is the Admiral. The enemy fleet is in position. They outnumber us roughly 6 to 1. Their weapons are superior. Their ships are larger. By every measurement they use, we should lose this battle. Gripped the controls of his pod. His knuckles were white. But we've spent the past 16 hours studying every recording from our first engagement. We've identified patterns, weaknesses, flaws they don't even know they have. On the tactical display, the human fleet was arranged in a formation that looked like chaos. Ships scattered seemingly at random. No clear lines. No obvious structure. The fight wars of intimidation. They arranged their fleets to look impressive. They prioritize display over flexibility. They've never needed tactics because their strength has always been enough. The fleet began to move, a wall of iron and fire advancing toward the scattered human ships. Today, we teach them that strength isn't everything. All ships execute Pattern 7, and may whatever gods you believe in have mercy on us all. The battle exploded into chaos. Human ships scattered in every direction but not randomly. Each one followed a precise path, calculated to draw vessels out of formation, to isolate them, to create gaps in the wall of iron. They responded with overwhelming force. Their weapons turned the void into a storm of fire and metal. Human ships died, the Courage, the Defiant, the Last Hope, names that would be remembered for centuries, reduced to burning wreckage in seconds. But for every human ship that fell, another slipped through the gaps, into the spaces between the giants, into range for boarding operations. Spod launched from the Perseverance at impossible velocity. The force pressed him into his seat hard enough to crack bones. Warning lights flashed. Metal groaned. but the pod held together barely, screaming through the battle toward its target. The command ship. "This is insane," shouted over the noise. His hands flew across the controls, dodging weapons fire by margins measured in meters. "We're going to die." "Probably," agreed, "but we're going to hurt them first." They hit the command ship's hangar at a velocity that should have killed them. The crash foam deployed a fraction of a second before impact. The world became noise and pain and tumbling darkness. Then silence. Clawed his way out of the wreckage. His ribs were broken. Blood ran from a dozen cuts. His vision swam with each step. Around him, other survivors emerged from the destroyed pod. 7 of them. 7 out of 14. "Move," ordered. His voice was a rasp. "Find the bridge." They moved through corridors designed for giants, past warriors who fell to weapons and tactics they'd never encountered, through fire and smoke and screaming alarms. The bridge was at the center of the ship. Massive doors blocked the entrance, doors that should have been impossible to breach. Corporal Shin, no relation to the Admiral, planted charges while the others held off reinforcements. She worked with calm precision despite the chaos around her. When the charges detonated, the doors buckled inward. Was waiting. The commander stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by dead bodyguards. He had killed them himself when they tried to convince him to evacuate. His ceremonial armor was stained with their blood. "Human," he said. His voice was calm now, almost respectful. "You've come to die." Limped forward. Behind him, his surviving soldiers spread out, covering angles, ready for anything. "Your fleet is burning," said. He gestured at the viewports. Outside, the battle raged, but something had changed. The formation had shattered. Human ships darted through the wreckage like wolves among scattered sheep. Dozens of vessels listed, venting fire, falling silent. "Impossible," whispered. He turned to look and his iron face went pale. "We outnumber you, we overpower you. How is this possible?" "You never understood us," raised his weapon. It felt impossibly heavy. His wounded arm screamed with each movement. "You looked at our bodies and saw weakness. You measured our strength and found it lacking. But you never understood what makes humans dangerous." Turned back to face him. For the first time, something like curiosity appeared in his eyes. "Then tell me, little creature, what makes you dangerous?" Thought about everyone who had died to get him here. About lying in a medical bay, fighting to live. About holding her hand. About the soldiers who had given everything so that others could keep fighting. "We're not strong because we don't break," he said. "We're strong because we always get back up. You can wound us, kill us, destroy everything we have, and we'll keep coming, keep fighting, keep refusing to give up." He steadied his aim. "You've spent 10,000 years conquering species that knew when to surrender, that understood when they were beaten, that valued survival above all else." The weapon hummed as it charged. We can't. It's not in our nature. We would rather die fighting than live as slaves, and that's something you'll never understand." The shot echoed across the silent bridge. Fell. The battle ended 3 hours later. The fleet, leaderless and confused, broke apart. Some ships fled, others surrendered. A few fought to the death, unable to accept what was happening. When the final count was taken, they had lost 347 ships. Humanity had lost 52. The coalition observers returned to their species with news that would reshape galactic politics for generations. The weak had defeated the strong. The prey had become the predator. 6 months later, stood in the Great Hall of Station, the same hall where had mocked humanity, the same hall where the coalition had laughed at their weakness. No one was laughing now. The treaty of granted humanity full membership in the Galactic Coalition, recognition as equals, access to trade routes, technology, diplomatic channels, everything that had been to them because they were considered too weak to matter. But that wasn't what the gathered ambassadors wanted to talk about. The representative approached after the ceremony. His compound eyes studied her with an intensity that she'd never seen from his species before. "We have spent many months studying your people," he said through his translator. "We have analyzed your battles, your history, your culture. We are trying to understand." "Understand what?" "How you won." The ambassador's mandibles clicked softly. "Your bodies are fragile. Yours are short. Your technology is primitive compared to many coalition species. By every measurement we use, you should have been destroyed." Smiled slightly, "And yet we weren't." "No, you weren't." The ambassador paused, as if choosing his next words carefully. "Our philosophers have created a new word for your species. In our language, it translates roughly as those who refuse." "Refuse what?" "Everything." The ambassador's compound eyes glittered. "Defeat, death, despair, logic, reason. You refuse to accept the universe as it is. You refuse to acknowledge limitations that should be absolute. And somehow, impossibly, the universe bends to accommodate your refusal." Looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were rebuilding. Human ships were exploring new territories. Human children were being born on worlds their grandparents had never dreamed of. "We're still learning to walk out there," she said. "Give us time." They made a sound that his translator rendered as something between laughter and fear. "That," he said quietly, "is precisely what frightens us." Far away on the Perseverance, Park stood at a viewport watching the void. His wounds had healed mostly. The scars would never fade. Behind him, the door opened. Lieutenant limped in, supported by a cane. She would never fight again. The doctors had been clear about that. But she was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, joining him at the viewport. "The future." Was quiet for a moment. "We proved something out there, something important, but I don't think the galaxy has figured out what it means yet." "What do you think it means?" Turned to look at her, at the scars that covered half her face, at the fire that still burned in her eyes. "It means they should be afraid of us," he said. "Not because we're strong, but because we don't know how to give up. Because no matter how many times they knock us down, we get back up. Because we will keep coming, keep fighting, keep pushing forward until there's nothing left of us." He turned back to the stars. "They laughed at our weakness. They thought it made us easy prey. They're not laughing anymore." Stood beside him in comfortable silence. Outside, the galaxy stretched infinite and unknown. And humanity was just getting started.